Yo, hi. So there's been something I've been thinking about. It's been quite a while since I recorded my last Simtoon's log. By the way, excuse the hair; it's a little messed up. I'll get that fixed soon. However, it's been quite some time since the last Simtoon's log, and I initially said, and actually this happened so many times. I initially said that I would record these on a daily basis, and before they were even on YouTube or anywhere, I had been doing this myself, for myself mainly, recording these logs. At first, they were just voice logs. It was actually inspired by Captain's log from Star Trek in 2017 or 18. No, even 16. My first logs were in 2016, give or take, or maybe even 15. Jeez, 6, 7 years ago, man. And I've actually been listening to some of those, and I was like, oh man, that was 6 years ago, and it's in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing. But I've been listening to it, or I was listening to it some time ago, and I was like, man, like actually so many things have changed. And I noticed personal changes, like for example, my pronunciation improved, and I could actually hear it. And also, like I've progressed, I think, with what I do, or maybe with the things I'm interested in. I got better, which is kind of obvious. Like over time, you get better, but it felt it was this interesting feeling. I can't really label it, but I was listening to myself, to my past self, and it felt weird. Like I can't really say why or how, but it was kind of weird, in a good way, because I've progressed since then, to the better, for the better, and changed for the better, and or at least I think so. So it's, yeah, kind of difficult to explain. You would have to experience it yourself, and maybe you have, and then you know what it feels like. But I really want to do this on a daily basis. And Simtoon's log, when I started putting it on YouTube and Spotify, it was kind of like I had to edit it every single day and cut out like pauses and mistakes and stuff like that. And that took quite a lot of time, maybe like 20 minutes every day, but it's still like those additional 20 minutes every day. So first you have to record it and then do the post-processing. And until I have someone who would do it for me, like an editor or something, I think it would be better to just do this format and upload it directly without any processing afterwards. I think that will save time, and it's also more genuine because it's unedited. So I think that might even be better. And with this, my goal, like I said before, is to like document my journey in like leading a startup software company and trying to make my dream come true. So, and that is essentially making software and games, and or like software in general, but specifically games, mainly, and tools that people would find useful that don't exist yet. And all of these things would would be released from the company, by the company. So I want to like document this journey, like how things go, what is being planned, what is being worked on, and some backstage details, like behind the scenes kind of thing. Like, yeah, I like it's also for myself, like it has been for years. So like my future self will look at this and be like, again, like in 6, 10, 15 years and more, I'll be like, this much changed. I kind of like grew up more, you know. So it's also for myself. So it's not something like I'm a vlogger now or anything. um, it's I think the personal part is larger. So like it's mainly for myself, but I also wanted to share it with anyone who might be interested. So I'll try to keep up with this every day. Just record it for a couple of minutes. Say what changed during that day, if anything, what I've been working on, and about Spotify. Like I don't know. Maybe I'll just pull the audio from this and upload it directly without any editing. That might be a way to, or automate the process. Write a little script which could use like FFmpeg, could pull the audio, upload it automatically, and that would actually be pretty simple and also a pretty effective solution. I might actually do that. So like this video will auto sync to a server. The backend server running under GNU Linux, of course, will take FFmpeg, pull the audio, upload it to another server, and Spotify pulls from that server and plays podcasts to people. So like it's a kind of like a podcast thing on Spotify, at least. Yeah. Anyway, so I also wanted to resume streaming again, kind of like for 2 weeks or maybe more now. Didn't get to it, but I will try tonight. We'll see. But a major thing that happened is that I switched full time to GNU Linux, specifically to Arch Linux. So I lost access to many, or rather to a lot of software that is Windows dependent, which is a good thing, but on the other hand, it takes some time to transition and find better free and open source alternatives. I already knew about many and used many, such as Blender or Krita or GIMP. But there are still some things. For example, Streamlabs OBS is a fork of OBS, but it's Windows only, and apparently macOS as well, but I can't stream games from my Mac because it's not powerful enough. Which means that I'll have to use OBS itself, and the setup will take some time because I have to set up my scenes again and set up browser sources from Streamlabs, like notifications and all those things, like this user followed you, what do they call it, alerts. So gotta do that and make sure it all works. So that's what I meant by the transitioning. So I've been trying to do that, and it's going well, but it'll take some time to test thoroughly. But I wanted to try, like, at least do a test stream tonight, see if it works. I've also found myself in a very uncomfortable situation because of my old hard drive, or rather back from Windows hard drive, because it's formatted as NTFS, which is a file system that is not very friendly with GNU Linux. It's not even supported by default. You have to get an additional package in most cases. And one of the problems is that Proton and maybe even Wine itself doesn't really play well with NTFS. So if you want to play anything through Proton, you're essentially required to use ext4 ideally. So now I need to take my 3 terabytes of data, back it up to somewhere, reformat the drive to ext4, and then put the data back. So I've been doing that too, and like to do integrity checks, make sure that everything is backed up, make sure that that the backup went successfully, so that like everything got copied, and like do a comparison between the two before formatting anything. It's important. So gotta do that too, and it's almost done, but it'll take like a day or two more, and then I'll be able to install games which I uninstalled from the drive, because it would make sense to back them up when I can just pull them from Steam again. So I deleted those. I'll have to acquire them again, and afterwards I'll try to stream something. And also there will be installation streams of Arch and Debian, and possibly Gen 2 later. Just quick, simple, easy to understand guides for people who are interested in free and open source software and in GNU Linux specifically, but are unsure on how to proceed, or if they could do it, if they have the necessary knowledge. There are many tutorials about this, but I want to make one that is easy to understand and quick and for non-technical people, so they would be able to just follow the tutorial, get their base system set up, and then just install what they want on top of that. And I'll show you how to do that, and I'll show you the most popular tools that you might have used on Windows, or rather their free alternatives, counterparts, so to speak. So like if you used Photoshop, I'll show you Krita. You might already use it or know it even on Windows, but I'll just present this like this, a list of counterparts that are free and open source that run on GNU Linux. So yeah, by the way, GNU Linux, it's the formal full name because GNU was the original operating system, and it was missing a kernel back in the 90s and like the end of 80s and the beginning of 90s. And when Linus Torvalds developed the Linux kernel in 91, he kind of like met with Richard Stallman, and they combined GNU, which was an OS with a missing kernel, with the Linux kernel, and those work together. And like formally it's called GNU/Linux or GNU plus Linux, or GNU Linux. If you want, you can call it that too, theoretically. But Linus Torvalds is against that. He just uses Linux. And Richard Stallman really wants people to use GNU/Linux or GNU plus Linux, because the GNU part is what he developed, and he kind of wants to be credited because he, according to his words, has done the bigger part of the result that ended up being the operating system plus the kernel. So yeah, just to clarify that. So Linux, GNU Linux, not a big deal, but I will continue using GNU Linux. Yeah, anyway, this is a longer one. The later ones will probably be shorter. And I also joined the FSF and the EFF. The FSF is the Free Software Foundation, and the EFF is the Electronic Frontier Foundation. These are two foundations that support digital freedom, privacy, anti-surveillance, free and open source software, and the ability to express yourself freely on the internet. So like freedom of speech online, without being worried about being spied on by governments or corporations, and then being raided, or like it's this ideology of having the freedom like you do in the real world, in most parts, where you can go wherever you want, you can travel, you can almost do whatever you want within the legal bounds. And people want this on the internet as well, not being spied on. Like you like, do you have a camera in your bedroom, like a security camera that's connected to your government? No. So why should you be spied on when you browse online? It's like, if you think about it, it's the same thing. Like our today's lives are mostly, or for some people, but like it's more and more like that, are mostly digitalized, and like we work online, we communicate online. So it's comparable to like having a camera in your room that is connected to the government or to corporations, like Google is watching you sleep or something like that, which is not far from the truth if you have a webcam or something, and it's not covered. So like, and like people think like I have nothing to hide, which might be true, but that's not even true. It's really not true, because there might not be anything illegal that you would hide, but would you tell people like it's, how would I explain it? Like, is there something that you wouldn't even tell your friends? So like, why would these corporations know that stuff? Why should they know that? So yeah, like, or maybe there are things that you would tell your friends but don't want anyone else to know. Either way, like, this is a complicated topic to discuss, but the point is that people just, like, including me, just want to have this freedom online without being spied on and without being watched. And even though these corporations don't watch you mostly real time, like there isn't a person looking at a monitor at your webcam feed or something. Like if you're not targeted by anyone, like by the feds or something, the government or the corporations are not watching you real time. But the thing is, the bigger problem is that there are machine learning algorithms, AIs, that that watch your behavior and then learn from that. And the problem is that, this goes for especially the biggest corporations and possibly governments as well, because they have a lot of data to work with. So for example, take Google. Millions of people search stuff online. Millions of people upload photos to Google Photos, upload stuff to Google Drive, use Google services. And from all this data, these algorithms can learn about any individual. And by acquiring this knowledge over time, they can build models that can be used for nefarious purposes, such as targeted advertising. And imagine, like, if such an algorithm learns about almost everyone in the world who uses the internet, it builds a vast database of several like personality types, and thus it can deal with mostly every personality type. And that means that it knows how to work with such people and how to manipulate them. And that's the problem. Like, I fear, and many others do, that in the future, like 5-10 years, but maybe sooner, like who knows, this will be actually used against people. So like, and maybe it already is, like who knows what is going on up there, but like this can be actively used against people, since it can manipulate them. It can act like a human being, at least in the text form. Like if chatting to someone in text, it can mimic human behavior, and it can manipulate people by knowing what kind of a personality type they are. So this information can be used against them. And the thing is that this is obviously not good, and it's already used for targeted advertising. And while some people might say that, okay, like if they know what I want to buy, why would that be a bad thing? Like, it gives me suggestions that might actually be useful to me. I would buy something that I want or that I need. Okay, for some people, sure, but the sole fact that they know this is scary. Like, I've actually been talking to talking about this to some people, and some of them were like, oh, sure, but I fear this. because like the sole fact, the mere fact that they know what you want to buy without you telling them is scary, that they actually have this information. And that means that there are so many other things that they could figure out about you from that data you provide them. So if you, like, do you see my meaning? Like one day it's gonna be actively used against people in some form. So I like, this is not the way the world should go. And if you use free and open source software, and if you use, for example, if you replace your search engine with one that doesn't track you, you minimize the chances that you will be profiled like this. And if many people do this and follow in this example, it will cripple these corporations' capability of doing such a thing. So this should be done. Like, you should switch to something that doesn't track you, replace your software with free software. And like in many cases, free software is even better than the proprietary one. So like Photoshop against Krita, like Photoshop might be like commercialized more, marketed more, you see more ads of it, people talk about it more because there's heavy multi-million and maybe billion marketing over the years behind this product. But if you compare the features and what you can actually produce with this software, Krita actually is on the level with Photoshop, if not better. And it's more lightweight. It doesn't require the freaking Creative Cloud or whatever, the agent that needs to be running in the background to spy on you as well. The app that you have to install, and it's up there in your tray if you use Windows all the time. I remember that from when I used Photoshop and Premiere years ago. So, you know, like even performance-wise, it's heavier than free and open source software in many cases. So it's logical that if you want to have this freedom and to save money also and to prevent being spied on, use free and open source software. It makes sense to me, at least. It's perfectly logical. You might have to get used to it, but it's worth it. Like in the long term, you will be thankful to yourself or to people who forced you to switch, because like for example me, like I have been using Linux for years. I had my first GNU Linux installation. It was actually on a Raspberry Pi. It was back in like 2013, 14. Actually, I remember coding in Python back then on Raspbian, which is based on Debian, on my Raspberry Pi that I had at the time. I was building like these little robots, but it was still like while I was attending elementary school, but so pretty early. But that was my first face off with GNU Linux, and I am thankful that I experienced that, even though I had spent years after that using Windows. I'm thankful that I met GNU Linux at that time and saw the positives, even though I didn't fully realize it at the time, and learned how to program and understood like technology in what I was interested in, so mainly like software development. And like I'm trying to remember if I used it before. No, that was probably the first time I used it. Anyway, so, and the reason why I used Windows after that for years was mainly because of games. But since 2018, Proton has come such a long way, that now it's possible to play almost any game on GNU Linux. And your games that use an anti-cheat solution are a bit more difficult to set up, even though many anti-cheat providers are porting to Linux, such as like Easy Anti-Cheat, I think works pretty well even natively on Linux right now, as far as I know. And these developers are targeting Linux because they know that that's where it's going. They realize that, and Valve is currently the biggest pusher of free and open source software and GNU Linux and gaming on GNU Linux, and they had been since like 2014 or so. I've seen a talk by Linus Torvalds from Portland, where he said that Valve is likely, or he said that he is willing to go on record saying that Valve will bring GNU Linux, or in his words, Linux desktop to reality. He said that in 2014, and last year in 2021 the deck was announced, the Steam Deck, which officially and by default runs Arch Linux, which is a GNU Linux distro. So he knew back then that Valve would be the biggest pusher of gaming on GNU Linux, and like, it's insane because it's like, it seems to be true, and they've spent so much money to develop Proton and to make games work, and they are also helping developers, and they work with KDE, or rather the K project. KDE is just the desktop environment, but they work with the K project, and they have been for years. So it's like I said, like, the excuses that I used to use, I can't game on Linux, are invalid these days. And if there is software that you have to use on Windows, there is almost definitely a better alternative that is free and open source for GNU Linux. In some cases, there might be a requirement from, for example, your employer, who says that you have to use this and it works only on Linux. In that case, you can try to run it through Proton as well. You can try to run it in a VM on GNU Linux and see if that works. There are many ways to not use Windows directly on your bare metal. So even if you're faced with a situation like this, there is no reason to install Windows on your bare metal. There might be some extreme cases. I'm not saying that there isn't any case where you might be forced to run Windows. There's still progress to be made with the compatibility with GNU Linux, but it's come a very long way, and those extreme cases are like unlikely, in my opinion, and from my experience. This actually, it's almost 29 minutes, turned out to be a bit longer than I had anticipated. Yeah, sorry about that, but I had to say this right off the bat, and I'll say during the streams as well, because I really think this is the future. You should use free and open source software, and I'm like, I consider myself and like, it's October 19th. Yeah, so approximately since the beginning of October this year, I had been very active in this area, and I consider myself, or rather, like, I am a member of the FSF and of the EFF. I even donated to them to support their activities, and I will continue spreading their message. And I've also started like planning events under Ongakan and also on their behalf locally about this topic and these things. And I'm also planning on doing some certifications for myself. I actually wanted to do the LPIC, which is the Linux Professional Institute certification, ever since like 2016, and I'm doing it this year. So it took me 6 years, and not because I wouldn't be able to do it. It was just I never like managed to actually find the time, or like I mostly forgot about it, and then it never came up. And recently, like a week ago, I said like, that's it, I'm done, I'm gonna do it now. So I'm doing it in November, next month. I've scheduled an exam and I'm going there to a nearby city to do it, and that's it, I'll have my certification. I'll do more like higher levels after that. I also want to do the Linux Foundation, I think it's Certified System Administrator. I believe so, that is the name of the certification. So want to do that too, get these certifications, like test my knowledge, and then use that to either like show my portfolio that I know what I'm talking about, and that I want to be active in this area, even professionally, like being employed somewhere, possibly like a sysadmin. And because like my main thing is like making games, that's what I do like for myself and under my company. But I also want to deal with Linux directly, which is mainly, or at least for me, it would be mainly done through like being a sysadmin. And I actually quite enjoy that, and I would be willing to do that for somebody else. So be like a sysadmin for an employer who has an infrastructure that needs to be managed and maintained. I would be glad to have an opportunity like that and to do that, and to like gain some extra money to put into my game development afterwards. And that would actually be pretty nice if I would be able to do that. So that's where I'm kind of like trying to go, but I'm trying to like being an activist, you know, like pushing this free and open source movement and free software movement, and trying to help people migrate from proprietary technologies, especially Windows, to free and open source software. Yeah, so that's what's new. Yeah. If you're still watching by any chance, thanks, but also stay tuned and watch the streams, and I'll show you how to install Arch, how to install Debian, how to install Gentoo later, how to customize them, make them your own, even create a minimal install that runs on pretty much anything, and then you can put software on top of that. So like a very lightweight setup, at least by default. And yeah, and then you can just play with it and customize and make it your own. And the great thing about Linux is that if you, for example, make a Rise, which is like a mostly graphical customization of your work environment, so like you have your taskbar, you have your window manager. If you want, you can have a desktop environment. It's not necessary, but you can. You have your color palettes, your notification daemon, and other components, and like compositor. And you can use these to make the experience your own, change their behavior, their colors, their looks in general, and really make it nice, like make it like feel like you, like you're at home, like you boot up your workstation and you're like, I'm at home, you know, like this feeling, this familiarity. And you wouldn't be able to do that with Windows. Not to this extent, by no means. So, and the great thing is that you can take the configuration files that you've spent hours tweaking and then take them to your next installation. If you upgrade to another machine or change your distros, you can use most of the configs on your new installation, so you don't have to do it all over again. You can also use several, let's call them profiles. So you can make one configuration, store it somewhere, and then make a new one and then switch between them. That's also possible. So you can really like mess with it. And the awesome thing about FOSS, free and open source software, is that you can change pretty much everything you want to make it work however you want, and you can learn how it works. So if you're missing a feature, implement it. Like, it's that easy. Like, if you know the language, and for example, the Linux kernel is coded in mostly C. Now they're trying to, I don't necessarily agree with using Rust. I am yet to try it, but we'll see what that leads to. But anyway, so like it's coded in C, and since I know C and also C++, and C++ is my main language, to a certain extent, I can make modifications and implement my own features and remove what I don't want to be there. Even though some stuff is very complicated and fucking crazy code, you still can do it. So like, you're free to do that. With Windows, you don't like the taskbar, you can't just change it, you know. You can use some third-party software to put another one on top, but that's like, let's be honest, that's kind of stupid. Would you have like two toolbars? That would take like more resources, and like it's kind of weird, I'm not gonna lie. So yeah, like you wouldn't be able to do it on Windows. So yeah, and if there's a bug or a security hole or anything, you have to wait for the maintainer, in this case Microsoft, the developer, to implement a fix. You cannot do anything about it yourself. With free and open source software, you can implement it, you can keep it on local in most cases and implement it for yourself, or optionally, and some licenses actually force you to, but mostly you're not required to. You can push the code, your changes, back to the source, to where you got the software from. So it gives you this freedom, you know, and I think that's what it's about. So I'm a supporter of this, and I will continue on being one. And I want to organize local events, such as a satellite Libre planet or our Ongakan events that would support and raise funds for the free software movement and like digital privacy and freedom. And the proceeds from that in part would go to the FSF and the EFF, and a part would go to our people who in the future shortly will start doing like these courses on how to work with free and open source software. So because they also need to live off something. And I will be one of those people, and there'll be a couple more who are already familiar with all this and are willing to spend some time to teach others. And I'm actively looking for such people. So if you're watching this now and not 10 years in the future, strike a comment or use the email or whatever, and let's get in touch, and you can help out, and it's gonna be great. I'll be very, very happy. So yeah, that's it for now. 39 minutes. Jesus, at the 13-minute mark, I was like, oh, this is too long, and now it's oh god, what an irony. All right, gonna upload this and see you tomorrow. And maybe on the stream, but probably tomorrow. Bye.